In this episode, we are going to take a step beyond cloud service models and look at a different question that affects security just as deeply, which is where and how the cloud environment is actually deployed. New learners often hear terms like public cloud, private cloud, hybrid cloud, and sometimes community cloud, and it is easy to treat them as simple labels rather than as meaningful security choices. The more useful way to think about them is as different ways of placing trust, control, connectivity, and responsibility across technology environments that support the business. A deployment model does not automatically make an organization safe or unsafe. What it does is change the trade-offs that security teams, leaders, and operators have to manage. Once those trade-offs are understood clearly, choosing a deployment model becomes less about trend, habit, or marketing language and more about matching the environment to the sensitivity of the work, the pace of change, and the organization's ability to govern what it builds. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is part of our companion study series. The first book is a detailed study guide that explains the exam and helps you prepare for it with confidence. The second is a Kindle-only ebook with 1,000 flashcards you can use on your mobile device or Kindle for quick review. You can find both at Cyber.Me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A cloud deployment model is best understood as the overall pattern for where cloud resources live, who shares the underlying environment, and how the organization connects those resources to its operations. This is different from cloud service models like software as a service, SaaS, platform as a service, PaaS, and infrastructure as a service, IaaS, which describe how much of the technical stack the provider manages. A deployment model instead describes the broader placement and ownership pattern around the service. That means two organizations might both use IaaS, but one may do so in a public cloud environment while the other uses a private cloud approach. Those choices create different security assumptions even when the service model sounds similar. A beginner should learn to separate those two ideas early, because many cloud misunderstandings come from mixing them together and then assuming that one word tells the whole story when it really only describes one dimension of the environment. Public cloud is the deployment model many people picture first because it is the most visible and widely discussed. In a public cloud model, the provider offers services over a broadly available shared environment, and many customers use the provider's infrastructure while logical controls keep their resources separate. This model is attractive because it often provides speed, flexibility, scalability, and access to mature platform capabilities without requiring the customer to own or operate the physical environment directly. From a security perspective, public cloud changes the question from direct ownership of hardware to careful management of identity, configuration, segmentation, logging, encryption, and service usage inside a provider-managed setting. A common beginner mistake is to think public automatically means exposed to the entire internet, and therefore automatically insecure. That is not the right comparison. Public refers more to the provider's shared service model and broad customer availability than to a lack of protection. A public cloud can be used securely, but only if the customer understands that convenience does not remove the need for strong boundaries and disciplined control. The security trade-offs in public cloud are often tied to speed and shared foundations. Because resources can be created quickly and services are widely available, organizations can gain tremendous operational agility. The trade-off is that mistakes can also scale quickly. A weak identity design, broad permission model, exposed storage area, or poorly restricted service can become reachable and exploitable much faster than in slower, more manually managed environments. Public cloud also depends heavily on logical separation rather than on the comforting idea of one company owning every physical layer itself. That means customers must be comfortable trusting the provider's isolation design, while also staying very disciplined about what they themselves configure. Public cloud security is therefore less about fearing shared infrastructure in a vague way and more about recognizing that identity, access, automation, data handling, and monitoring must be very strong because the environment is designed for rapid, networked, service-based operation. Used well, that design can be very powerful. Used carelessly, it can expose the organization at the same speed it empowers it. Private cloud is often described as a cloud environment dedicated to one organization rather than shared broadly across unrelated customers in the same service model. That private environment may exist on premises, in a provider facility, or in some other dedicated arrangement. But the main idea is that the cloud-style operating model is being used in a setting more closely reserved for a single organization's use. This often appeals to leaders and security teams because it feels like it offers more control, more predictability, and greater comfort around isolation. Sometimes that comfort is justified, but beginners should be careful not to confuse familiarity with automatic security. A private cloud still requires strong identity management, sound configuration, careful segmentation, patching, monitoring, and disciplined governance. The organization may gain more direct influence over architecture and operational decisions, but it also carries more direct responsibility for making those decisions well. Private cloud can reduce some concerns tied to sharing, but it also removes some of the convenience and provider-managed strength that public cloud customers may benefit from when those services are well designed. The security trade-offs in private cloud usually center on control versus burden. More control can be helpful when the organization has very specific regulatory expectations, unusual performance needs, strong data sovereignty concerns, or workloads that require tailored design choices not easily supported in a broad public environment. At the same time, control is only valuable if the organization has the skill, budget, staffing, and governance to use it well. A private cloud can become less secure than a public cloud if the company overestimates its own operational maturity and underinvests in maintenance, logging, segmentation, or lifecycle discipline. This is one of the most important security lessons for beginners. Owning more of the environment does not automatically mean protecting it better. A deployment model that offers stronger direct control can still produce weak outcomes if the people operating it cannot sustain that control consistently. Private cloud is therefore not the secure choice by default. It is the choice that may better fit certain needs when the organization is actually prepared to carry the corresponding responsibilities well. Hybrid cloud brings together more than one environment, often combining private cloud, traditional internal systems, and public cloud services in ways that support different business or technical goals. This model is extremely common because many organizations do not move every workload into one place at once and may never want to. Some systems remain inside closely controlled environments due to sensitivity, timing, legacy design, or operational dependence, while others benefit from the speed and flexibility of public cloud services. Hybrid cloud can be a sensible and powerful approach because it allows the organization to match different workloads to different homes rather than forcing one answer onto every use case. The security challenge is that hybrid environments create more boundaries, more identity paths, more integration points, and more chances for assumptions to break down between one environment and another. In other words, hybrid can reduce risk when chosen carefully for the right reasons, but it can also increase complexity in ways that become dangerous if the connecting trust model is poorly designed. The key trade-off in hybrid cloud is flexibility versus complexity. Flexibility is valuable because an organization may want to keep especially sensitive data in one environment, burst temporary workloads into another, or maintain local control over some operational systems while still using cloud-native analytics, collaboration, or development capabilities elsewhere. The complexity appears when identities, networks, logging practices, management tools, and data movement begin crossing those boundaries. A weak hybrid design can create exactly the kind of blurred trust environment that security teams struggle to govern, where people no longer know clearly which controls apply where, who owns each part of the path, or how data should be protected as it moves between environments. Strong hybrid security, therefore, depends on consistent identity decisions, careful segmentation, clear ownership of integrations, and deliberate thinking about what should move across the boundary and what should not. Hybrid is not just a middle ground between public and private. It is a design choice that demands careful boundary management precisely because it combines environments with different assumptions and strengths. Community cloud is discussed less often, but it still matters as a concept because it highlights the idea that some cloud environments are designed to support a group of organizations with shared needs, such as common regulatory obligations, mission requirements, or industry-specific expectations. The exact form can vary, but the central idea is that the environment is not as broadly shared as a general public cloud, and not as exclusively dedicated as a pure private cloud. Instead, it is shaped around a more limited community with aligned requirements. For security thinking, this model introduces an important lesson about shared context. Sometimes the right deployment choice is influenced not only by technology and budget, but also by common governance expectations across a sector or mission set. The trade-off is that shared requirements can improve alignment and standardization, but they do not erase the need for each participating organization to manage its own identities, access decisions, data handling, and operational discipline. A community cloud may fit certain environments well, but it still depends on clear boundaries of responsibility among providers, participants, and shared governance structures. One of the most important ways to compare deployment models is by asking where trust is placed and how much of that trust is justified by actual control and visibility. Public cloud asks the customer to trust provider isolation, provider-managed infrastructure, and a shared service environment while focusing heavily on customer-side configuration and access control. Private cloud places more trust in the organization's own ability to operate and protect the environment well. Hybrid cloud requires trust to be managed across several environments at once, which means trust must be translated cleanly from one context to another without becoming overbroad or inconsistent. Community cloud places some trust in shared mission or sector alignment, but still requires strong local discipline within each participant's use of the environment. This way of thinking is useful because it stops the discussion from becoming emotional or overly brand-driven. The question is not which model sounds more modern or more traditional. The question is where trust lives, how it is enforced, and whether the organization can actually support that trust with strong security practice. Data sensitivity is another major factor in deployment model choice, but beginners should be careful not to use it in an overly simplistic way. It is tempting to say sensitive data always belongs in private environments and less sensitive data belongs in public ones, but that rule is too crude to guide real security decisions. A more helpful question is what controls the workload requires, how well those controls can be implemented in each model, and what the organization must prove or guarantee about handling, location, retention, access, and resilience. Some highly sensitive workloads can be handled securely in public cloud when identity, encryption, segmentation, logging, and governance are strong enough. Some workloads may still be better suited to private or hybrid approaches because of latency, operational dependence, contractual limits, or unusual design needs. Security trade-off thinking means resisting the urge to sort deployment models by fear alone. It means asking what the data needs in practice, how the workload behaves, and which environment can realistically meet those needs without creating new weaknesses somewhere else. Operational maturity plays a major role in choosing wisely, and this is where many organizations misjudge themselves. A team may prefer private cloud because it likes the feeling of control, yet lack the staffing, automation, patch discipline, and monitoring needed to run that environment well. Another team may move quickly into public cloud because the services are easy to obtain, yet fail to control identities, permissions, and configuration sprawl once the environment expands. Hybrid environments can be especially revealing because they demand consistency across multiple operating styles. If one side of the boundary is mature and the other is weak, the whole design may become harder to defend than either environment alone. This is why choosing a deployment model should never be treated as a purely technical architecture exercise. It is also an organizational honesty exercise. The best model is often the one that fits not only the workload, but also the real strength of the people, processes, visibility, and governance that will be responsible for keeping that workload secure every day after deployment. Cost and speed also influence cloud deployment choices, but security trade-off thinking requires looking beyond the most obvious short-term benefits. Public cloud often wins on rapid access to services and lower upfront infrastructure commitment, which can make it very attractive to growing teams or organizations trying to move fast. Private cloud may involve more direct investment and slower build-out, but offer advantages where customization and controlled operations matter more. Hybrid approaches can balance these pressures, though they may also introduce hidden operational cost because supporting several environments at once is rarely simple. Security becomes relevant here because rushed decisions driven only by speed or price often produce architectures with weak ownership, confusing boundaries, and underfunded control layers. A fast deployment that nobody can govern well is not a secure success. A highly customized environment that consumes all the budget but leaves little left for monitoring and lifecycle management is also not a secure success. Clear trade-off thinking means understanding that deployment models affect not only where workloads live, but whether the organization can afford to secure them responsibly over time. Vendor dependence and portability deserve attention as well, because a deployment model can shape how easy or difficult it becomes to move workloads, redesign services, or adjust trust boundaries later. Public cloud often offers powerful native services that accelerate innovation, but heavy dependence on those services can make future movement harder if the organization later wants to change providers or redistribute workloads. Private cloud may preserve more direct control over architecture, but still lock the organization into certain tooling, operational assumptions, or management platforms. Hybrid designs can reduce dependence in some ways, but they can also create so many interdependencies that movement becomes difficult for a different reason. Security trade-off thinking helps here by asking whether the chosen model increases resilience or simply relocates dependency. A deployment model should support the business, but it should also allow the organization to adapt when risk, regulation, provider relationships, or mission needs change. The more tightly everything is bound to one pattern without clear exit thinking, the more the organization may discover that convenience today becomes constraint tomorrow. By the end of this discussion, the main lesson should feel much more practical than a simple list of deployment labels. Public cloud, private cloud, hybrid cloud, and community cloud are different ways of placing workloads, trust, control, and responsibility across technology environments, and none of them is automatically the right answer in every case. Public cloud offers speed, scale, and powerful services, but requires strong customer-side governance in a shared environment. Private cloud offers more dedicated control, but also demands that the organization truly be capable of operating that control well. Hybrid cloud offers flexibility and fit for mixed needs, but increases complexity at the boundaries. Community cloud can align shared mission or sector requirements, but still depends on clear local accountability. Clear security trade-off thinking means choosing a deployment model based on data sensitivity, workload behavior, operational maturity, visibility needs, dependency risk, and the organization's actual ability to govern what it builds. That is how deployment choice becomes a security decision grounded in reality instead of a reaction to buzzwords or comfort alone.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.